Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahamsa Rudikacharya Ashtakota Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Rudikacharya Ashtakota Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 11th day of May, 2020, in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I'm not sure exactly where we left off, but we'll begin in the latter part of chapter 12. So we're reading from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita as is, entitled Devotional Service. Text numbers 13 and 14 on page 522 of the book. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nadahankara samadukka sukhakshami santushtak satatang yogi yatatma dhananishtayaha mayarpitamano buddhi yomad bhakta same priyaha adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nadahankara samadukka sukhakshami santushtak satatang yogi yatatma dhananishtayaha mayarpitamano buddhi yomad bhakta same priyaha. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nadahankara, samadukka sukhakshami, santushtak satatang yogi, hitatma dhranishchayaha, mayarpitamano buddhi, yomad bhakta same priyaha. Okay, I'll read the sentence myself. Adveshta, non-envious, sarvabhutanam, toward all living entities. Maitraha, friendly. Karunaha, kindly. Eva, certainly. Cha, also. Nirmamaha, with no sense of proprietorship. Nidahankaraha, without false ego. Sama, equal. Dukkha, in distress. Sukhaha, and happiness. Chami, forgiving. Santushtaha, satisfied. Satatam, always. Yogi, one engaged in devotion. Yata atma, self-controlled. Dridhanishchayaha, with determination. Mai, upon me. Arpita, engaged. Manaha, mind. Buddhi, and intelligence. Yaha, one who. Mat bhaktaha, my devotee. Saha, he, may, to me. Priyaha, dear. Translation. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Purport. Coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these two verses. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone. Nor does the devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds, so it is better to suffer than to protest. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, it is stated, Tatte nukampam susamikshamano punjana evat nukutang vipakam. Whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore he is always calm, quiet, and patient, despite many distressful conditions. A devotee is also always kind to everyone, even to his enemy. Nirmama means that a devotee does not attach much importance to the pains and trouble pertaining to the body, because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. He does not identify with the body, therefore he is freed from the conception of false ego and is equipoised in happiness and distress. He is tolerant, and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty. Therefore he is always joyful. He is a completely perfect mystic because he is fixed in the instructions received from the spiritual master, and because his senses are controlled, he is determined. He is not swayed by false arguments, because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. All these qualifications enable him to fix his mind and intelligence entirely on the Supreme Lord. Such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but the devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. Furthermore, the Lord says that such a devotee is very dear to him, for the Lord is always pleased with all his activities in full Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So as Srila Prabhupada points out at the beginning of this purport, Krishna has changed gears a little bit, and he's now, for the remainder of the chapter, he's going to speak about the qualities of the pure devotee. And it's interesting that each verse practically ends with this phrase, Yomad Bhakta Samepriya. Such a devotee is very dear to me. And in the last verse he says, very dear to me. So the whole chapter is titled Devotional Service, and it begins with this question of Arjuna, which is better, basically the personalist or the impersonalist. And Krishna says very distinctly that one who fixes his mind on me, this is text 2, those who fix their minds on my personal form are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. And that sets the standard. In other words, this chapter is the last of the middle 6, which Prabhupada said is the essence of the Gita. And Krishna is laying it out very clearly that this culmination of all mystic efforts and all efforts at yoga and purification culminate in this standard of constantly thinking of Krishna, mind and intelligence fixed on him, great transcendental faith, and always linked to him in devotional service. But then surprisingly, not surprisingly, but interestingly, he then immediately says, but those who are impersonalists, they're fixed in the impersonal, all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, they also ultimately achieve me. By controlling various, being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. Now those are some interesting caveats, because in terms of the Mayavadi group, we find, as Prahlad Maharaj says, that, of course, there were no out-and-out Mayavadis then, but he describes the mood, prayena deva munayo svavamukti kama, maunam chadandi vijane naparata nishta. The tendency is, when one is absorbed in this idea of the impersonal absolute as the final goal, as that's something that you're striving for, is that you see all personal relationships and all these things as very insignificant, something you want to get beyond. And so what Prahlad Maharaj says here is that, for the most part, those who are after their own liberation, and he uses this word swavamukti kama, they're lusty for it, it's a material desire ultimately, they go off to secluded places, the Himalayas or some mountain, cave or forest or something. Maunam chadanti vijane means without any people. Napararta nishta, they don't have any determination to help others. That's not their goal. They want the liberation for themselves. Now, Prahlad draws a strong contrast between what his mood is. He says, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to, Prabhupada translate, I'm going to stay in the cities, and because I don't see any hope for these fools and rascals who he's described previous verse, after the flickering sense gratification, ordinary karmis. But you, I have to be someone who is giving them an opportunity to practice devotional service to you. He's speaking to the Lord Nrsimhadev, Supreme Lord. So it's unusual, or Krishna is setting a caveat here. They can come to me at last, but they have to be engaged in the welfare of all, equally disposed to everyone. In other words, they have to come out of their impersonal affection, attraction, and start to see me as the goal. They can come to me, but they have to become bhaktas. And then he lays out this very important verse. It's very difficult. Klesho adhikatatastesham avyaktasakta chetasam. Those who are attracted to the avyakta. Avyakta means invisible, basically. The inconceivable, invisible. How can you be attracted to it? You know, an attraction to a person or something. But who prefer that to the personal conception of the absolute, they undergo tremendous trouble. And you can easily see why. Because the bottom line in any effort to transcend, to attain self-realization, God-realization, is that you have to somehow cure yourself of the attraction to this world, because that's what's binding us. Whether you're a bhakta or a yogi or an impersonalist, the truth is that you're bound to this world of birth and death and suffering by your unfulfilled material desires. They're never fulfilled. This lust burns like fire, is never fulfilled. So gross and subtle desires keep us bound here. This hridaya granthi is the knots of the heart. So how to untie those? How to cut those? Now, it's one thing to think, all right, I'm going to perform severe austerities. That's one route, and that's what the classic impersonalists do that. The yogis, if it's freezing cold winter, then let's go find a river and cut the ice and bathe in it. If it's hot summer, we'll go out to the desert, build fires. Classic thing. So what's the purpose of all of this? To strengthen the will, and basically through the force of one's will and determination, to break the enthrallment with comfort and sense gratification. It's austerity, tapasya in the most literal sense of the word, burning out these desires. First of all, to separate oneself from the objects of the senses. Why go all the way to exclusion? So there's no women around, it's not comfortable. Systematically do that. Now, this is adhikatara klesha. This is extreme trouble and suffering. Who are Krishna says, those who are attached to the avyakta. Therefore, the path of the oneness, the Brahman, the impersonal path, is fraught with dukkha or unhappiness for those who are embodied. Well, that's us, anyone who's embodied. So, the point is that if you realize, if you understand, and this is such a basic theme in the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, everything we have, that Brahman is simply the first penumbra of the absolute truth. Ultimately it's the effulgence of Krishna's body, and then you have the Paramatma, and you finally have Bhagavan. So we don't worry about the Brahman so much. We understand its role, and we see Yasya Prabhapa Bhavato Jagadanakoti, but we're concerned with the personality of Krishna. We know that the final goal is this revival of our relationship with Krishna that's long been forgotten, long been buried, and that will include liberation. Mukti Swayamukali, that famous verse by Bilba Mangal Thakur about the relation between bhakti and mukti. He says, Bhakti Tvayi Sthidatata Bhagavan Hyadisyad Daivedanak Palati Divya Kishora Murti. So in these two lines, he's saying, for those who are fixed in devotion to you, my Lord, Bhakti Tvayi Sthidatata means very firmly fixed. They'll, if you do it right, you'll get the fruit of that devotion, which is what? A vision of your beautiful adolescent form, the revelation, And as far as mukti is concerned, Mukti Swayam Mukulitanjali Sevidesman, she's waiting at the door to serve you. In other words, that comes in the train. That comes automatically. So this great struggle to attain mukti, that's right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. The second verse, Dharma Projita Kaita Votra. There's this little series of lectures by Gopi Puranadana Prabhu on the first and second chapters of the Bhagavatam. And he points out that in this verse, the word atra, appears 3 times, meaning here in the Bhagavatam, this is what you'll find. Here in the Bhagavatam, 3 times it says. So the first atra, says here in the Bhagavatam, you won't find any mention of the cheating religion. Dharma projita kaita vota. Projita means thrown far away. And Sridhar Swami points out in his commentary, this is mentioned, I think, by Gopi right there. I've heard Prabhupada mention it, that mukti is one of if your aspiration is mukti, that's one of the cheating religions. The objective that results in the dharma, very difficult, that is ultimately a cheating religion. Because it's based on your own desire. Prabhupada points out in one place that, we often think, well, you really don't find many people around who are after liberation. But actually you do. Because the effort to escape from the material sufferings in this world is of the same species as liberation. Liberation just means, well, let's get free of all of it, by not having a material body anymore. But that's also a material desire. There's 2 sides, mitigating the suffering, maximizing the pleasure, 2 sides to material consciousness. So here you're maximizing the suffering to get to a point of suspended animation. You know, you don't have any senses, you don't have any mind, you're just conscious, but you're free of birth and death. You know, but that's like, I probably give the example, a hospital patient. You know, you're laid up in a hospital long enough, and all you can think about is when I'll finally get out and get back to normal. You know, I'll be free of this pain, and you know, but that's when you finally get out. That's not your goal. That's just enables you to take up your life and keep going. So the real life of the soul is in the spiritual world in relationship to Krishna. So it's very clear he's talking about bhakti, and it's very troublesome path. So then he comes back again to straight bhakti in 6 and 7, and those who worship me, giving up their activities unto me, and I'm the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. In other words, they get all that. The deliverer from the ocean of birth means you get mukti, but that's but what is the quality here? They worship me, give all activities to me, in devotional service, meditating upon me, fix your minds upon me. This is bhakti. The bhakti itself brings the mukti. Krishna willingly comes and lifts you up and brings you back to the spiritual world. So it's much preferred and much easier. Now, in the next few verses, you know, first is, okay, so therefore, in text 8, therefore fix your mind upon me, personality of Godhead, engage your intelligence in me, thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Okay, finished. But no, here in this chapter, he's very liberal. He says, okay, you may not be able to fix your mind on me without deviation, but follow the regular principles of bhakti. And I always thought when I read this chapter, well, this is where we're at. This is like, we're trying to develop the desire. It's interesting to develop the desire. It's a whole reformation of desire, really is what's going on. If your desire is great, then you got the laulium, you know, you're far along. So then, but even if you can't, now people who are entangled in the material world, they can't really take full time, you know, and practice full time, can't follow all the regulations of bhakti, then try to work for me. In other words, give the hard-earned fruit of your labor to the cause, or you know, if you have time, come do some service, because for working me, you will come to the perfect stage. In other words, you get within the path, and as you go as far as you can practically in this lifetime. It may not be everything, but knowing well from the early chapters and chapter 6, whatever you can do in sincere bhakti, that's in your eternal bank account. So you're enlivened to do that. So that's this text 10. Try to work for me. And then some people, I can't even do that. I don't want to work in this kind. Then try to give up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. So in other words, don't fall into the completely self-centered, egotistical, enjoying mood. Give up the results of your work. For that, find some kind of charity that you can give to, and you know, because it's disastrous for the soul to be buried under this me and my consciousness. That's the false ego, and you flip over into demonic mentality. So at least try to be kind and try to be giving. And what I see from this also is that when devotees, you know, are out there, you know, meeting people and inviting them to the temple and selling books, then some of that giving will go to the devotees. In other words, yeah, they'll take a book and you know, give to a good cause, and then they're, you know, it may be a gata sukriti. They don't know exactly what they're doing, but this tendency to be give up the results of your work, try to be self-situated, can result in connecting to bhakti. And then he says, but better than a knowledge is meditation, better than meditation, renunciation of fruit, for by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. So that's before the verses that we read today. And then he comes back to this standard here, which completes the middle 6 chapters. He's ending up those middle 6 chapters, so the whole thing culminates in bhakti. And then the remainder, he's actually going over material, some of the material he's dealt with before, like the 3 modes, but he deals in more detail. It's important. So let's go through these qualities, because they're all, and it's interesting, you know, the order, adveshta sababhutanam. Adveshta has dual meaning, you know, the idea of enviousness. Dveshta merely means enmity. You know, envious also means just jealous, which it also encompasses. But the idea is that to be a well-wisher toward every living being. that's what I understand, you know. But I think that the weight of the meaning here is on the of not, you know, not bearing enmity or malice toward anyone. Because Prabhupada, as I pointed out, you put, you know, this word envy, Prabhupada use it to mean both things, and oftentimes mean to malice toward others. So that's the first thing. And you know, and the flip side is maitra karuna evacha. In other words, one to be non-envious, not to hurt anyone, but to be on the positive side, to be a positive friend and to show compassion. It's interesting, he begins with that. He doesn't begin with always thinking of me. That's there, of course, at the end. But these are the symptoms, or probably call the symptoms, characteristics of one who is Krishna conscious. And these qualities should be evident. Nirmamo narahankara. This idea of possessiveness, you know, the Ishopanishad, it begins, the first mantra, you know, Ishabhashamidam Sarvam Yatkinchit Gat. Everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're entitled to our quota. But when you take more than that when it's necessary, then you're strengthening, you're building the false ego, which is your tie to the material world. And so it's that's why you know, simple living is so important, to be able to be satisfied with what comes easily of its own accord. That's there, I think, in the 4th chapter. Yadricha labhasantushto. So how can one be satisfied? You know, this is relevant to this idea of varnashram dharma, because you have these 4 classes. Prabhupada set it up, and he tried to, you know, say, well, we have these farm communities where you can do it ideally when we're still trying to do that. Well, how can you be satisfied? You know, if you're living simply, you don't have all of the accoutrements of the modern society and all these things. The only way to be satisfied with this simple living is if you're getting a strong dose of Krishna consciousness. In other words, you feel yourself progressing in Krishna consciousness, you're relishing the kirtans and the deities and the whole association, and you can be satisfied with practically nothing. Because the satisfaction is something you're feeling in the heart. It's not a question of piling up certain possessions, you know. This is the great fallacy of the false ego, is you're thinking, you've invested your attention and your hope in enjoying external things, external experiences, relationships, and with things as well as living things. And that can never be satisfying because it's temporary. The relationships always come to an end, or they become attenuated, or even become the opposite of what you hope them to be. And so it's very frustrating. That's the fallacy of this possessiveness. And you can see in a society like we have today, it's carried out to the extreme. You know, and how can you ever be satisfied? Even because the persons who are, you know, the demons. Jayadvaita Swami once wrote an article called "The Demons Amongst Us." Did you ever read that? Yeah, the BTJ article many years ago. I think it was right after Prabhupada disappeared, 77, 78, something like that. And you know, these articles are all great. He's a great writer. But that's exactly what, you know, we have to see, is that people are ignorant, and they get influenced by the dominant culture, and it's a culture of commercialism, neoliberalism, you know, so-called, simply exploiting nature and building up this edifice. And there are so many winners and losers, because what happens with that demonic vision is that you see everything and everyone as a potential resource you can exploit, you know, which is exactly the opposite of what Krishna says here, Advaishta Sarvabhutanam, or even the impersonalists, if they're going to develop, they have to be kind to all, you know. So feeling nothing is mine, everything belongs to Krishna. Whatever I have that's in my possession should be used for him, and feel that it's loaned to me for his, you know, even my own body belongs to Krishna. There's this beautiful verse in the 11th canto, which there was a devotee named Vidura here years ago, I think before your time, Indian fellow. And he pointed out to me, because he was into verses and things, that this verse is very well known. It's like one of the verses that a lot of children learn and things like that. Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava unasata swabhavat kadodi yadyat sakalam parasmai Narayanayeti samarpayetam. So this is a formula for living free of fear. And what it's kind of an expansion of the verse in the 9th chapter. Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat yohosi, whatever you eat, whatever you do, make it an offering to me. So here he makes a list. Kayena, with your body. Vacha, words. Manasindriya, your mind and your senses. Buddhya, your intelligence. Buddhyatmana, with yourself. Whatever you've acquired of these, each one has a certain set of these, due to your previous activity. Karoti yadyat sakalam parasmai. Whatever you do with these, and this is how we act, this is our karoti yadyat sakalam parasmai, you feel, and you're actually forming your life so that it is such, is an offering to Narayan. So it's like every breath you take, every step you take, this is an offering to Narayan. This is 11th canto. I can give you the reference. I think the 3rd chapter, the 9 Yogendras. Yeah. It's in the section that has these verses, Bhayam Dvitiya Benavishita, the source of fear. And anyway, it's a lot of quotable verses in that. That is the first of the teachings of the Yogendras. So, nirmama is an important, to live as simply as possible. What would he have? Feel that, this is paraphernalia for Krishna's service, therefore it's sacred, but I'm not going to try to enjoy it separately. And nirahankara, not feeling that one is independent doer, that I'm the cause of all these activities. Previously I said, later one of the verses says, to not, something like it, not endeavor for anything. Sarvaramba parityagi, to renounce of all endeavors. Well, how is that? Because we do so many things. What I get from that is that the motivation for any of your activities, it really should be within the compass of service. In other words, it's something that you're doing. It may be a whole project that will eventually be, realized. Or it may simply be worshiping the deity, cooking, whatever you're doing. Is that the impetus for the service is not coming from me. It's not my idea, but it's coming through the spiritual master, through the authorities, from Krishna. This is part of the service of Krishna. So that's why I'm doing it. That's the ideal of freedom from false ego. In the sense that whatever I'm doing, I'm just like Arjun. I'm nimitta matram. I'm like Krishna's hand, And therefore, you can be very peaceful in that. You do the best you can. It may be successful, it may not be successful. But as long as you try it sincerely, then it's a perfect act, of devotion. And so you're not building up a sense of separateness, which will lead to the false pride and a sense of anger if it's not successful or someone gets in the way of it. So this nirmamona hankara is very important. Samadukak sukakshami. So to be tolerant, forgiving. These are two qualities. Samaduka sukha means to be equipoised in happiness and distress. This comes up again and again, because the whole material mentality is just the opposite of that. Is to work hard to minimize the dukkha and increase the sukha, material happiness. And inevitably, you're not quite successful. The dukkha comes even though you don't, at your greatest efforts, you still can't keep it going. And the sukha doesn't come or leaves, in spite of your greatest happiness. Just like Prahlad says in his, I love this verse, Yasmat priya priya viyoga sayoga janma shoka agnana sakala yonashadayamana. In those two lines, he's describing the material life perfectly. He says, Yasmat apriya priya viyoga sayoga. In Sanskrit, they sometimes have this wonderful thing where they'll have a list and then another list, and they line up, respective. Like you have, this verse, Ishwaretad adineshu balisheshu dvishachacha. This describes the Majjhima Adhikari. So there's 4 different elements there. Ishvara and adineshu, thus related to the Lord. Balisheshu, the innocent, and Vishatsu, the Dvesha, the inimical, So the Majjhima Adhikari, now then after that then they have 4 different ways of relating which line up. Ishvareta balisheshu dvisha prema, maitri, kripa, upeksha. Prema, you try to develop love for the Lord. Friendship with the devotees. Kripa, or mercy toward the innocent who can take the Krishna consciousness. And upeksha, you ignore and try to avoid the envious. So the same thing is happening in this verse by Prahlad, the lining up. Yasmat Priya, apriya, viyoga, sayoga. So this is the origin of the fire of lamentation that everyone is living in the material world. So priya is the things that are dear to you, and that is viyoga is taken away, ripped away from you. You develop an attachment to something, it's your body, or so many things, and but eventually they're taken away by time, So that's of course the lamentation. And the things that you want to avoid at all costs, they're forced upon you. So that's the other side, causing more fire. And not just in human form, Sakala Yonashu. Every species of life is going through the same thing. The little ant, has got his idea, of going to the sugar, whatever it is, and he's working very hard to get there. But you may be frustrated, and it doesn't meet his expectations or whatever. And then there's the danger that comes, some flood or some Bigfoot, So every species experiences this. So now in the human form of life, there is with our intelligence, we can try to avoid or counteract the miseries. It's everywhere around us. Right now there's a big effort, to counteract this pandemic. So that's called the dukkha aushadam, a remedy for the dukkha. But he said, dukkha aushadam tadapi dukkam. That remedies themselves bring more misery. So this is the situation we're in. And then he said the taddiyaham. Now Prabhupada, there's different ways of understanding this, of translating this. Prabhupada said, taddiyaham, that I'm thinking I'm something I'm not. In other words, the source of it all is the false bodily concept. But another understanding, I think Vishwanath mentions, is that I'm thinking it's just the opposite. In other words, I don't recognize this whole syndrome, and I don't break out of it. I'm thinking that the remedy is really working. I don't recognize that it's keeping me more and more entangled and causing more. So the solution to the whole problem comes in the fourth line. He's speaking to the Lord Nrsingadev, his prayers. Bhuman brahmami vadameta vadasi yogam. My dear Lord, O great one, I'm wandering in this world suffering like this. Please instruct me in your dasi yoga, which is synonymous with bhakti yoga. It's very nice. So that's the samadhu. Yeah, he says it's dasya yoga. So this being able to get equipoise and happiness and distress, it's right there in the second chapter. Who has steady intelligence? Dukeshu anudvignamana, sukeshu vigataspahas, the same idea. Anudvignamana. Udvigna is this word, disturbance of mind. Prahlad uses it in his first statement to his father. So and shami is forgiving. There's different words for tolerance. This is the tolerance of, against someone who's insulting you. It's person to person. That's chami, to forgive that. And to always be satisfied. You can only be satisfied if you're Krishna conscious. You can see this is how you can be santushta, completely satisfied with yourself. Satatam, yogi, connected to Krishna. Yatatma, self-controlled, and dridhanishchaya, very determined in your sadhana, And of course, mayarpitamano buddhir, all of it really starts and ends with that one's directed and devoted his mind and his intelligence to Krishna. And such a devotee is very dear to me. So these are, it's very nice to read these verses because you say, well, okay, I have to try to develop these qualities. There's a certain, on one side, we know they develop if one advances in devotional service, but on another side, one can, develop them when in other words, like the adveshta savabhutanam. I remember we used to have a cat, and he would come around at breakfast time all the time, many years ago. And it was a remarkable cat. I mean, years this cat was coming by, and I and other devotees, he had a thing for kheer, naturally. Cats love milk, concentrated milk. So he brings this cat this milk, and you realize, well, this is a special soul here in this cat, I mean, he's coming around, and what does he know? He knows the kheer, but he also it's how many cats are attracted to specifically, to the prasadam and everything. So this is a way, by your activities, you can also develop these qualities. That's the idea. It's not just automatic. It's consciously, developed. Okay. Any questions or comments on these points? Okay. All right. Let's go to the next text. We have time for one more, maybe. Text 15. Yasmano judate loko. Lokano judate chayaha. Harshama shabayod vegair. Muktoya sachame priyaha. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. Purport. A few of a devotee's qualifications are further being described. No one is put into difficulty, anxiety, fearfulness, or dissatisfaction by such a devotee. Since a devotee is kind to everyone, he does not act in such a way as to put others into anxiety. At the same time, if others try to put a devotee into anxiety, he is not disturbed. It is by the grace of the Lord that he is so practiced that he is not disturbed by any outward disturbance. Actually, because the devotee is always engrossed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, such material circumstances cannot move him. Generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear. And when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. A devotee who is always transcendental to all these disturbances is very dear to Krishna. So this not putting others into disturbance. When you go back to how did this movement develop, grow, and how is it growing today, wherever it is growing? It's really a very personal thing. It's the qualities of the devotees. I mean, they may be, trying to sell this book or invite you or whatever it may be, but it's the quality of the devotee which is in contrast to what people usually feel. And that basically it's, if the person, I have this great phrase that Brigupati used in his offering this year. He wrote the New Dwarka offering, and we also sent it to the tributes book by his request. And he says, how does it go? He says people don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. So it's very pertinent, because that's the underlying reality of a devotee's personality. One who's sincere is that you've gotten a certain amount of enlightenment. You've experienced the benefits of the knowledge and the practice, and so whatever realization you have, it's something, and it should result in you wanting to share it. To see it's not very difficult to understand that everybody in this world is a spirit soul, and the human beings, they have a chance to take up Krishna consciousness just like we did. So that's sincere effort, to help others. Not that I'm trying to sell you something for my own benefit, but I'm trying to give you something that is for your benefit, and that's the only thing I want. Reminds me of a verse about Nityananda Ashtaka. So this is a great Ashtaka. I can turn it on if you want. Are you familiar with it at all? You have it. Yeah. But it's really wonderful. And Nityananda is also a very inspiring personality. So the way it's described, Vrindavan describes, is that he goes to Lord Chaitanya and he says, I forget the poem, I should really memorize it again. He says, Ahi bratra nrinam kalikadushinam kinna bhavata tata prayaschittam vachya yidana yasi mahite bhajanti tvam nittam sahabhagavata mantriyati yo bhaje nityanandam bhajanaturukandananavadi. So, our friends are trapped in Kali's clutches, yearning to break free, just worship Nityananda Ram, the root of the Bhakti tree. So he approached his brother, Lord Chaitanya. He said, Ahi brata, oh brother, the people of Kali Yuga are being overwhelmed by the effects of this age, and they're suffering so much. So please create some kind of prayaschitta, some kind of process by which they can easily approach your lotus feet. So Lord Chaitanya says, okay, the process is Harinam Sankirtan. And here's the formula. You go to the people, and what is it? Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shika. Instruct them. You chant Krishna's name, you worship Krishna, and you give instructions to others. So then the next verse describes him, going out. Yateshtam re bratu kodo hodi hodi dvanamanasham tato vaksangsara buddhitanadayo mihi. The gate says, "Oh my dear brother, if you please, just chant Krishna's holy name incessantly, and by this process give to me the alms, because I'm a beggar here. Give me the alms of your liberation from birth and death." That's all I'm asking. In other words, he's asking the people take the name. So that's the mood of the devotee. He's trying to give out this most precious gift of Krishna and Krishna prema and the holy name and all of these different things. And just the acceptance of that gift is bliss. If someone takes a book, gives a little donation, or chants Hare Krishna, that's the fulfillment of your mission. You don't feel like, what did I miss out on? It's like, so that's the idea here, is that far from putting people into difficulty, you're trying to give them the greatest gift. And the flip side is that you're able to tolerate so many things because you feel connected. If you go out on Harinam, I remember we used to go in Fort Lauderdale during the spring break. When I lived in Miami, we'd go up there because there's thousands of kids, Many of them are drunk, isn't it? So, but still, they're in the holy name. Some of them would chant. So I remember, we'd get catcalls sometimes. People would pour beer on us, and all kinds of different things. But you felt, well, Nityananda, he went out, he suffered so much, and this is, so it's a, you're what is it? You're not putting people into distress, and you're not disturbed by anyone. And equipoise in happiness and distress. So the idea is that externally you may be in a happy situation or a distressful situation, but internally you're feeling that connection to Krishna. So even the difficulties that come, Prabhupada, I hear these lectures in the early days, people would get arrested. Apparently they were really into it in Australia for a while. They arrested devotees, causing a disturbance in the street or something. So Prabhupada said, well, what's the problem? You chant on the street, you chant in the jail. You keep chanting. And so it's you're able to tolerate these things, because you feel this is a tradition. Lord Nityananda underwent so much trouble, So fear, anxiety, you're equipoised. In other words, you transcend it, or you see it as, in one sense, undergoing these things is a source of bliss, because you're undergoing some trouble for the sake of your Lord, for the sake of the Sankirtan mission. So it's a way of living, and you find that just as when you join the ashram, you begin to, there's so many things that seem impossible, getting up early, the cold shower, the discipline, difficult living conditions. But if you're really in the fire of Krishna consciousness and you find that it's not difficult, and it becomes a real relief not to be absorbed in, oh my God, my wardrobe, what about my hair, all of these different things. It's just, you realize how illusory that is, and because you're keyed into a source of happiness that's way beyond that. Okay, any questions? No questions, no comments. Okay. So, okay, what's the one more, because it's kind of a short purport. Anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gatavitaha sararamba padityagi yomad bhakta same priyaha. My devotee, who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me. Purport: money may be offered to a devotee, but he should not struggle to acquire it. If automatically, by the grace of the Supreme, money comes to him, he's not agitated. Naturally, a devotee takes a bath at least twice in a day, so this is the shuchir, and rises early in the morning for devotional service. Thus he is naturally clean both inwardly and outwardly. A devotee is always expert because he fully knows the essence of all activities of life, and he is convinced of the authoritative scriptures. A devotee never takes the part of a particular party, therefore he is carefree. He's never pained because he's free from all designations. He knows that his body is a designation, so if there are some bodily pains, he's free. The pure devotee does not endeavor for anything which is against the principles of devotional service. Sarvaramba Parityagi. For example, constructing a big building requires great energy, and a devotee does not take to such business if it does not benefit him by advancing his devotional service. He may construct a temple for the Lord, and for that he may take all kinds of anxiety, but he does not construct a big house for his personal relations. Now, Prabhupada wrote this, he's writing this in like 67 or something. But in a few years, that whole thing, in Bombay would happen. And so much anxiety, so much trouble. But he wasn't doing it, for himself. He's doing it for Krishna. So it's a legendary, these pastimes are probably, and when that book comes out especially, and everyone will get to read the story. It serves as a inspiration down through the ages. You can see here's someone who struggled so hard to establish something that seemed so difficult, and he had all these forces arrayed against him. But because he was, working for Krishna and he had promised Krishna, it's really a wonderful story. And so that's another a reason why he may take on all kinds of anxiety for this, the service of Krishna, because it will not only, it may or may not be successful, In Prabhupada's case, it was, certainly successful. He didn't succeed everything he wanted to do on ashram specifically. But the very effort that he put into it is inspiring for all generations of bhaktas. So it has a ripple effect, these things. So, okay, I'll end with a very happy note, some nice poetry. Hare Krishna, if you allow me. So here's my poetry for the age of the plague that we're in now. And you heard this before, but if someone's out there, they may not. Aho bir nakaleva duyate sudha sudhara modadam pade pade dine dine chandana chandra shitalam yasho yashoratana yasigiyate. And that actually illustrates this idea in several of these verses of not being disturbed, being equipoised. So because at every step they drink a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power, sandal paste enhanced with camphor, can't defeat, they feel as if the raging blaze of Kali's days had ne'er begun. How blessed are they who fill their days with praise of Shri Yasoda's son. So speaking of Yashoda's son, Urari katamudari tatabangam, Navajaladadikidano rasadang. These, you're going to chant these one day. I want to hear you chant. You got them. Urari katamudari tatabangam, Navajaladadikidano rasadangam, Yuvati badahadatamanatatangam, Panamatiyamanatadikitadangam. Completely fulfilling. If you learn this verse, you can chant it 12 hours, and you won't think you need anything else. So he says, his flute emanates entrancing sounds for the cowherd girls whose love abounds, for the clever cloud-complexioned lord who's dancing upon the Kalindi shore. Clever cloud-complexioned lord. There's actually part of the verse I couldn't fit in, which is that you should offer your obeisances to him. Yeah, that's in there also. So this is the great gift, one little drop of the nectar from the ocean of nectar left by our acharyas, Rupa Goswami. The art, the aesthetics. We heard this word vidagda. In English it's like aesthetics. Everything, the beautiful dressing, the speaking, the fragrance, and all of that. There's an aesthetic element to it. And Krishna's always like a dancing actor, a ballet dancer. You know what I mean? So that is there in every aspect, and we have most obvious and accessible to us is the sound. The Bhagavatam itself is the pinnacle of poetry. And we should take advantage of that, because that's a great source, an unending source of bliss. To be able to fix your mind on Krishna. Well, how do you fix your mind on Krishna? Well, you learn one of these verses. And you could chant it again and again. Maduram, maduram, babadatsya babo, maduram, maduram, badanam, maduram. Madugandhi madusmitameta daho. Maduram, 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 maduram. It's Karnamrita. It's quoted twice in the CC. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair. But his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. You can think of Guru Hari while you say that, or even look at Guru Hari. What more do you need? Hare Krishna. So we have kirtan in a few minutes? Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we'll pick up on text 16 tomorrow.